Rise up, A-Town. It's the Falcons Squad. Everything Atlanta Falcons every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the ATL. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Straight from the ATL, the Falcons Squad Show starts now.
Welcome to the Falcons Squad Show, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Locked On Falcons host Aaron Freeman and Locked On analyst Jarvis Davis. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And our Squad Show is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, was the offense running on 10 like Jarvis said they would have to coming out of the gates? We'll talk about that. And how about that defense? What do we think about the defensive performance for the Falcons today? But ultimately, whether we talk offense, defense, or special teams, we always say that in order to get a win, you really have to be on point in all three phases. And unfortunately, special teams, one person in particular, misunderstood the assignment. So let's start right there, guys. This was a big matchup out of the gates for so many reasons. And we're going to talk about all of those reasons today. But ultimately, you're playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the team that seems to have robbed you, Atlanta Falcons, over and over the last couple of years of being able to win the division. Jarvis, we said on Thursday Squad Show that this was a statement game, early game, but a statement game because A, it's a division game, B, second year of Raheem Morris and his regime show improve, and C, it's a home opener. So everybody failed to deliver pretty much in what should have happened today because the outcome was 23-20 in favor of the visiting Buccaneers. But let's just be honest about this thing. When I said I didn't want this game to go to overtime, JD, I didn't mean that I didn't want it to go to overtime, period. I meant get the touchdown and go home. But Younghoe Koo obviously thought otherwise. Falcons go 60 yards in 8 plays in 57 seconds, the kind of thing you want to see in a 2-minute or a sub 2-minute offense, but only to see Younghoe Koo not deliver. Why are we having a conversation about a chip shot 44-yard missed field goal and an 0-1 start to this season?
It just stinks. The fact that we're starting this doggone postcast talking about Younghoe Koo, because, you know, I know we're going to get into it a little bit later with MPX and what he did because, man, he just messed up all my little thoughts that I had about 9 because, you know, I was going, we were going to talk about 9 for a long time if Younghoe Koo had made that doggone field goal. But, you know, obviously, you know, it doesn't guarantee them a win in overtime. But the fact that he missed that kick, and I was watching him in pregame, he was missing right. He pushed that bad boy to the right. I'm just like, oh, gosh, what are you doing? You know, this is like, these are the things that are supposed to be chip shots. These are the things that we said in preseason when he essentially won the battle that he was going against Lenny Craig with, right? So, but for him to kind of just, and he made the warm-up kick, right? They called a timeout. He just kicked it normal, and it was all right down the middle and everything, and all the Tampa Bay coaches were going crazy on the sideline because he got a little chip shot, practice shot in. And he came out there and absolutely missed it. I hate the fact that we're talking about a kicker because the way Michael Penix played, we shouldn't be starting this bad boy off talking about a kicker because he missed almost cussed. He missed a chip shot field goal.
Yeah, and that's kind of how you feel. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the infractions that also cost the Falcons dearly today, Free. But ultimately, Aaron, when you think about people or players that we shouldn't be having conversations about, names that we don't want to hear, it's names like Wilkinson, it's names like Newsel, Lindstrom, Matthews, Bergeron. Translation, the O-line. Other names we don't ever want to be starting a show off with in a bad way, Koo. So why in the world are we having this conversation about Younghoe Koo missing a 44-yarder?
I don't have an answer to why other than this. It's the same old conversation. And this is the problem with this whole situation with Younghoe Koo, where the leash is going to be incredibly short. And especially when you have a kick like this that is potentially a game-tying clutch field goal where, for 5+ years, Younghoe Koo consistently came through in those situations. Last year, he didn't. A lot of people questioned. One of them, maybe to the right of me on your screens, questioned the Falcons' decision to retain Younghoe Koo beyond last year after his struggles. Yeah. And, we got to training camp. For the most part, he was good in camp. He missed a kick in that last preseason game, and it was just like, why did you have to insert this doubt into our minds? But you see that doubt get manifested today with Younghoe Koo. And there's certainly going to be lots of questions and lots of second guessing about the decision to retain him. And then on top of that, even if you do decide, okay, well, let's bring Lenny Craig up from the practice. Is Lenny Craig ready? Because we didn't really get to see Lenny Craig that much during the summer. So again, we talked about it all summer, where it's like Lenny Craig was the emergency option. Yeah. And are we ready to break the glass now after one game? It feels like, at least, I'm looking at the chat right now. It definitely feels like everybody in the chat is ready, already smashed that glass. So
right.
If Raheem is.
But Aaron, can you blame him? I mean, because again, this is not, and Jarvis, chime in as well. And I want to lean into this part for the fans, because this is the type of thing that makes the fan base flip out, crash out quickly, because you've seen this movie play over and over again so many times. At least if you get the win in week 1, right? Even if it goes down to the wire, even if you got to get the win in overtime, a win is a win. But when this is what happens to you, where your offense does its job and it gets you in position, getting the ball, throwing it incomplete when there's nobody there, or making sure that there's no crazy pick, or there's no fumble, getting out of bounds in order to save the clock. Your offense did its job. Aaron, Jarvis, you can understand why this fan base is already beside itself saying, hey, cut time, because they've seen this movie so many times before.
I don't think that at this point, I don't think Raheem Morris can afford to play favorites, because he kind of semi-mentioned that. I love me some Younghoe Koo. Essentially, that's not exactly what he said, but this football, I'm sorry. Feelings are, for losers. He says stats are for losers, feelings are for losers. It's all about production, baby. What you do on the field. What have you done for me lately? Yep. That's the thing that you need to be concerned about. That's what you need to fall in love with, because we can't start how Koo finished last year. We can't do that, because that's what it feels like, right? Because I was sitting up here like, man, I don't want this to come down to a field goal. I just didn't. Yep. I didn't want it to come down to a field goal because of how your quarterback was playing, because of how your defense was playing. They gave up some big plays and everything, but I think overall they played well enough to win. But when you were talking about it coming down to whether or not 6 can make a kick, isn't that the same storyline from last year? Why we still, it's 2025. Yeah. Why we still talking about the same thing that was back in 2024? I'm sorry. Exactly. We should not be there. We should not be here at this point talking about this man right now on this Falcons Squad Show, and him being the reason why we lost this game.
Right. And Aaron, Raheem Morris was asked in the post-game presser about how to make sure this first loss doesn't snowball. His response, quote, I don't think there is anything causing panic. I'm not saying panic, but I would have wanted to hear something a little bit stronger there. I don't know. And again, like Jarvis said, want to take emotion out of it. But on the same token, this should be frustrating. There should be a level of frustration, disgust, disappointment, etc., that I hear on that podium, because this is unacceptable. I don't care that it's game 1. It was Tampa Bay.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. It's, for me, it's week 1. I get what you're saying, T, in the sense of you want to see a greater sense of urgency from this team coming off of this loss.
That's what I mean. That's exactly what I mean. Yeah.
That's not how they operate. So you're not going to get Raheem Morris to go on a post-game presser and be like, wait, this is unacceptable and we got to completely rethink and scrap everything. Like, that's just not how he's going to roll. So if you're looking for that type of response, I just don't think you're ever going to get it. Even if the Falcons had lost this game 44-3, you wouldn't have gotten that type of response from him.
Right. I just want to hear him, like, give me something. And like you said, he's just going to keep it even keeled. That's kind of how he is. He's a very optimistic person. But on the same token, I just think this is one of those where there were little nuances, like this moment where Ray McCloud was just kind of trotting to the other side of the field when he realized that he wasn't lined up on the right side of the field. And I don't want to say that Ray McCloud didn't do some good things today. But what I am saying is that was one of those moments in time where I said, do you all not understand that there should always be a sense of urgency? Like every play, there should be a sense of urgency. Every call, 4th and 1, you got a back lining up 7 yards deep. Where's the urgency in that? But okay.
I'm not saying panic.
No.
But you can evolve.
Yes.
There's a such thing as evolution. Evolution is, you can go back as far as you want to, in that conversation. And I saw some evolution from Raheem Morris today. Calling the timeouts, the challenges, like making time to challenges, even if they did not go in his favor. There was a point in that it was at a point in this game where he needed to do that to see if you can get the judgment call can go in your favor. And I think that when you have a kicker who is dragging over the same story that we talked about last year, that's not evolving. You're not evolving.
Yeah.
I saw you make some time to time. I had a little question about that second time out. All right, okay. You want to have the extra down or whatever to be able to, play, be able to make sure your offense gets out of bounds and stop the clock and everything. But when you have this kicker, this guy coming in here, I don't understand that's your guy. I understand that's who you want to rock with. That's who you wanted to win this quote unquote competition coming in the offseason, right, against Lenny Craig. But yeah, man, like sometimes things have to change, and sometimes, and when change needs to come, it starts with self. So, and you're the head coach, and it's a trickle down effect that goes on when you start to make those necessary changes. And it's not panic. Panic would have been, I don't know how you could panic in that particular situation because Younghoe Koo is the only kicker that's on your roster at that particular point. But but I think that you have to understand your downfalls in this particular game, and Younghoe Koo is one of them. It's just one of them. There were several,
and that's
what they didn't have that great of a game either.
Right.
But
and that's kind of what I was
list,
going.
You have to do it. Yeah. If he's on that list, you have to kind of address it.
Exactly, Jarvis. And that that's a perfect segue into what I was going to ask you guys next, because if we're being honest, a game is never really won or lost on just one play, albeit that's a painful play to lose it on. But it's the little things that do take place in a bad direction, like 8 penalties, or the little things that don't happen that throughout the game that really cost you the game. So for you, Jarvis, what are some of those plays that maybe the Falcons left on the field that led them to even being in a position for Koo to have to kick them into overtime?
Wow. I think for me, it has to be the not being able to put Baker on his back. I think that was one. It was several moments where you didn't get the sack, or you allowed him to break contain and let him get outside the pocket and extend the play, or scramble for 5 or 6 yards to extend the drive, or get enough yards so they in a 3rd and short type situation where they was running the ball. And I think that was one of those things that we talked about leading up to this game, saying, okay, you can't let Baker get outside. If you keep him in the pocket, he's not effective. Because I was having a conversation with one of the media types that, that's sitting next to me, and I was just saying, he's big time Baker Mayfield fan, and he love how he competes and all that stuff. I like, yeah, I get it, but keep him in the pocket though, and see how much you love him. See how much he can compete for you then. When he's those unscripted plays are what makes Baker, an effective quarterback, right? So, see how I just admitted that, what I'm saying? He's an effective quarterback when he's able to, go off script. But if you keep him in the pocket, you saw that there were several missed throws that he had that the Falcons could have taken advantage of, but they weren't able to do that. And I think that allowing Baker to kind of cook a little bit, and get warmed up, and you saw when he hit that touchdown to Emeka Buka, and I was like, yeah, man, that's what happens when you don't put him on the ground.
Yeah, for me, obviously the end of the game is going to get the bulk of the attention, as it always does, because that's the make or break moment. But there was a lot of plays that were in the lead up, and I know we're going to go into this further, but it felt like to me the offense had plenty of opportunities. They got off to a great start. They finished strong. In between was a little questionable, right? And to me, a lot of it was penalties, as you mentioned, T. A lot of it was the inability for them to run the ball in short yardage situations. Yes. That I think really called out, a bunch of drives. So it's one of those things where we, talking about Koo, and a lot of these issues were issues last year, and it was the question going into this game was, are these going to continue to be issues? And as we saw, some of these things with the offensive line, with the running game, some of the question marks, we didn't get the answers that we wanted to get in terms of seeing improvements in some of those areas. And I think that was really some of the plays that really left things on the field for the Falcons that had some of those earlier drives in the second and third quarter. They had been able to come away with, instead of settling for a field goal, they get a touchdown, or they come away with some types of points. Obviously, you're not in that position where Koo has to make that kick at the end in order to win the game.
So thinking about the offense, what do we think about Zach Robinson's play calling and his strategy for today? We'll talk about that when we take it under further review. This episode of our Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right means cashing in. With football back, PrizePicks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. It's quick, it's easy, and honestly, it'll be your favorite way to follow along with football. You just wait and see. And you can check out projections like Josh Allen for more or less than 207 passing yards, 270 rather, Saquon Barkley for more or less than 1 rushing touchdown. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Now, again, download that app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. For $50 in lineups after your first 5 play, not a bad way to start the NFL season for 2025. PrizePicks is good because it's good to be right. Aaron, there was a lot of talk in the offseason about what this offense could be. In fact, Jarvis said, hey, I think that this can be a potent enough offense to where it can score 28 points a game and probably will need to score 28 points a game to win a game. Unfortunately, they fell about a touchdown score short of that today, which is in large part why we are talking about a loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Of course, Falcons lose 23-20 in the home opener, the season opener. But let's dig a little bit deeper into Zach Robinson's strategy. Obviously, going without Darnell Mooney can impact your strategy, and we'll talk about that part in a moment. But first, when you look at it overall, what did you like about the way Zach schemed this game? What did you not like?
Well, I love the opening drive. They come out with some 2 tight end looks, something that we rarely saw last year. Very first play action pass goes for a 50-yard touchdown. I'm like, oh, what an incredible concept. If only there was a very humble podcast host out there that had spent 6 months talking about how play action was going to solve so many problems for this football team. And at least, 2 minutes into the game, it looked like that very humble podcast host, whoever that person is, was, dead on accurate. But he's probably too humble to talk about how he was right on that particular issue. Just so humble. But yeah, I liked how the game sort of started. I liked how the game sort of ended. It's all the in-between with Zach Robinson. And, it'll be interesting to go back and watch the film, because anytime the Falcons tried to run it between the tackles, like, it didn't work. And then it felt like Zach Robinson started to get a little cute with trying to figure out ways to not run it up the middle without and so I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, his play calling is bad in the sense of because you get 60 some odd plays and they're not all going to be winners, and so sometimes you look at, oh, well, that play didn't work, well, he's a terrible play caller. Like I feel like that's a little bit of a stretch, but at the same time, a lot of when it comes to running the football, it's just kind of you need guys to get a hat on the hat, and it didn't feel like the Falcons were doing an effective job doing that in this game. And so I don't want to be too critical of Zach Robinson's play calling in those situations, just because if Vita Vea is blowing up blocks, like there's really not a whole lot you can really do about that other than just like, we'll try to run outside. And then when you try to run outside, like we saw late in the game with Bijan, at the 1 yard line, like, the Bucs saw that coming a mile away and it was like, oh, that's easy. So like those are the types of things I'll be less critical of. So overall, I feel like there were promising signs of Zach Robinson's play calling. Still a lot of things that are still areas of concern that we'll have to parse through the film to sort of see exactly where I ultimately fall on it. But overall, again, as someone who knows someone who didn't necessarily have the highest opinion of Zach Robinson, I'm like, okay, this is kind of par for the course as far as I'm concerned. But I don't know. I don't know what you think, Joe.
So let me ask you this. When you look at where Zach Robinson was in how he schemed today's game versus where he was, whether you want to go a year ago in his debut as OC or whether you want to go at the end of last year, do you feel like, and again, using Jarvis's word, did you feel like you saw any elevation in the way he schemed this game?
Well, compared to last year's opener, it was way, way, way better than last year's opener. But in terms
towards the end of last season,
towards the end of last season, I mean, I think there was some, again, utilizing play action to me was probably the biggest thing that to me was the biggest change. Outside of that, it felt like very similar to the offense that they had been running last year, outside of just sprinkling in a couple more play action passes.
Yeah. And what about for you, Jarvis, when you look at how Zach Robinson called this game, what did you like? Maybe what did you not like so much?
I think that Michael Penix made plays and it wasn't necessary because it was a play that was called. I think when it came time for him saying, okay, my boy over here not blocking and I got to step up in the pocket. Oh, there's a lane for me to run? Yep, I'm taking advantage of that every time. Every time there was an opportunity for him to make a play with his legs, he did it. Those are some of the things that I felt like really stood out to me. But as far as Zach Robinson from a play calling standpoint, I really question. I know Aaron is going to like this. I question him putting his players in position to succeed. It's like on that 4th and 1 call, you're in 12 personnel, and you got number 8 ready to block Hassan Reddick from coming down and crashing down and cutting off any opportunity that Bijan Robinson has to cut back. And then Ryan Newsome, hey, he's struggling one-on-one with Vita Vea. Woo, what a concept. Aaron and I had a really good conversation on Locked On Falcons about those mixers, right? I feel like the mixers were missing. What I mean when I say that is, instead of going outside zone on that particular play, let's get some gap, man. Let's get a regular old school double team slip on number 50 because he was working one arm. It's just, look, Ryan, about to walk right to the play. You're going to take me right there. And then, Bijan, I'm just going to make Newsome make the tackle on you. And you're just going to fall to the ground. Like, you can't have that. You can't put your players in those positions and say, hey, man, 8, I want you to block Hassan Reddick. Oh, yeah, Newsome, I want you to block one-on-one with Vita Vea.
Yeah.
No, Jack, not in that moment. Yeah.
Right.
He should be able to do that at some point throughout the game, right? Because he gets tired and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But not in that moment. In that moment, you have to say you can't give the players opportunity to fail in those moments. And I feel like he did that.
That's a great point because you look at, and that's where maybe you don't see the elevation that you wish you would have seen, just in terms of like that football IQ to say, hey, different player, albeit different situation, but you should have been triggered. Like, wait a minute, I saw this movie before. Now, the main characters were TJ Watt and Caleb McGarry last year, but I have seen this movie before. So I know how.
I was triggered. T. Triggered.
Yeah, and rightfully so, Jarvis, because that's what I kept saying. I kept looking and waiting for that moment, especially after halftime, waiting for that moment when it's like, okay, wait a minute, we do not want a TJ Watt, Caleb McGarry outcome yet again. So here's where I'm going to scheme this a little bit differently. And I didn't maybe see those halftime adjustments that could have at least staved it off a little. Like you said, Jarvis, there's no way of getting around Vita Vea completely, but maybe it's one of those where you can't stop him, but you hope to contain him, and maybe contain will be just enough to get you a few extra yards in those critical run plays. So yeah, I think that you make a great point with that one. But yeah, it's tough too, and I don't know how we'll obviously we hope we're not having this conversation next week, but I mean, Free, you got to think too of how it may have impacted or did impact the way Zach Robinson called the game, bigger picture overall, and not having wide receiver number 2 out there in Darnell Mooney.
Yeah. So much of the Falcons' offensive success through the year last year was just like, hey, Mooney, go get open. And Kirk throwing the ball down the field, Penix throwing the ball down the field to that guy. And no shots at Casey Washington, but he's just not that caliber of wide receiver where you can just say, go get open. And you can beat man coverage against Jamel Dean and Zion McCullough, who's the latest, $20 million a year or whatever the Bucs paid him corner, this past week. That's just not really what Casey Washington does. And so if you didn't have Mooney, you were going to need to scheme up some things for the other receivers, because the only guy that you can truly trust to win in those situations where it's like, hey, I need you to get open, is Drake London, right? Credit to Kyle Pitts. He was able to do some nice things today and show a little bit more than what we saw consistently last year. As we talked about in the lead up to this game, he typically has good games against the Bucs. I think this was another good one. Again, nothing that is going to, put him in the ring of honor or anything like that. But he made some plays, especially late, that you needed him to make with London out of the lineup there. But certainly, we talked a lot about, how good this wide receiver depth was in the summer with some of the promising signs that we saw through training camp. But at the end of the day, if your offense just needs a guy to go out there and beat man coverage, not having Mooney for the entirety of this game and not having Drake London for the final 2 minutes of this game, you just don't have a receiver that can just beat man coverage. And so that does put a lot more pressure on the play caller to kind of call things that aren't just reliant on beating man coverage.
Yeah, because you look at Jarvis, that play with like around 11 seconds left and or 16 rather seconds left, and Michael Penix has his pass incomplete to Casey Washington, and you can't help but think, man, wonder what that would have looked like if Mooney would have been out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was the first play that came to mind when Aaron was talking about, no shade towards Casey Washington. I thought he played well, for to be as far as stepping in for a guy like Darnell Mooney, but I'm probably about 100% sure that Darnell Mooney would have caught that route. He would have took that lick. Of course, who else was over there to kind of knock the ball loose? Antoine Winfield. He Antoine
Winfield. Oh, well, he showed up. Okay, yeah,
shocking. yeah, so he's a playmaker, right? So he's gonna be drawn to that ball. He's wherever the ball is, that's where 31 is going to be. And I feel like Darnell Mooney in that situation, you probably would have caught that ball. Now, whether or not they would have been able to get to the line and spike the ball in that situation, I don't know. But I feel like he would have made that play because Darnell is he was one of those guys last year that when they needed a big play down the field, they trying you with man coverage, they're playing up and all that stuff, and you just need somebody just to get open. That was the play those are the plays that he made last year, and I feel like he would have made it in that moment as well.
Yeah, and that's the tough part. Just knowing what that could have been, what that might have looked like if Darnell Mooney was actually in the game. And to your point, Drake London as well. So yeah, there are those missed opportunities. And that's why we always say, while it comes down to one play, it doesn't come down to one play, because there are moments like this that also can make a world of difference. Let's switch to the defensive side of the ball. We're going to talk a little bit about Jeff Ulbrich and how we liked or didn't like what he schemed today for the Falcons when we come back. This episode of the Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by GameTime. So NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why you use GameTime, and so do I. The app that gives the advantage back to fans. GameTime is fast, easy, and backed by the GameTime guarantee. You always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. Pull up on GameTime, and in just a couple taps, you can see amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games, as low as $100. So download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply, but again, that's promo code LOCKEDONFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download GameTime today. So, Jarvis, this is another opportunity that we were looking forward to, just to kind of see what Jeff Ulbrich would scheme, how he would use some of the rookies, Jalen Walker, James Pierce Jr., how rookie class 2.0 would actually show up in what you kind of have to consider their kind of season opener, their kind of coming out party, if you will, because of all the injuries that we saw in and out of the class of 2024. And then, of course, kind of seeing if veterans, young vets like Arnold Ebiketie, for example, or Zach Harrison may have taken that next step. But first things first, let's start at a high level. What did you like about what you saw from how Brick schemed today? What didn't you like?
What I liked was the fact that how he used the rookies on the back end of his defense, or how the rookies were put in the position to make plays, right? Billy Bowman had a sack on today. That's something that I'm not surprised about, because I feel like that was a brick pick. The brick pick came through, and I feel like you saw the aggressiveness in the run game as well, selling out. And another guy that we really didn't talk about that much, and people were like, who that? Agent Zero. That's another brick pick. Divine Diablo. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes, sir. Yes. I was there for all of it. Well, I'm talking about a linebacker coming and filling that doggone hole. Oh my goodness. Yes. It was so refreshing to see a linebacker come in the hole and a running back just disappear. Instead of you make contact with the running back, and the running back goes start chopping the feet for 3 or 4 more yards down the field, or he breaks the tackle and breaks it off for a big run. Divine Diablo was putting guys down, and it was one particular play where he didn't even make the tackle. He sold out, and all he did was run the running back right into Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates came down, just bow, and for the tackle right at the line of scrimmage. So yeah, stuff like that, I just love to see. Those are some of the things that I really like. When it comes to, though, as far as what I didn't necessarily, I wouldn't say I didn't like it. I felt like, there was moments where the Bucs started to get a little bit of momentum running the football. Now, I think overall they didn't run the football well, right? But there were moments where they were extending drives, and they were in 11 personnel, and they, of course, Falcons were in that nickel, but they had like their light nickel. I call it light nickel. They got the big nickel with Zach Harrison at the end spot, and they have that light nickel where it was Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. out there together. So that's some of the stuff that I feel like you have to kind of keep an eye out on, especially if they keep coming back to those formations and you keep running those light guys out there, and they're turning around and handing that bad boy off, or they're turning around and sticking in that running back stump and pulling it out, and Baker got all day to throw the football. So that was the thing that I feel like, I'm not sitting there saying that I didn't necessarily like it, but I felt like it was there were moments where you just got caught in those situations a little bit too much for my liking.
Yeah, and like you said, a solid overall game, but really just when it comes to that run game for the Bucs, because other than a long scamper by Baker Mayfield that got him 20 yards, if you will. It's just 101 yards on 23 carries. So, I mean, decent day, but nothing that the Falcons need to be overly concerned about as far as how they defended the run. And also, like you said, and maybe even deeper than what the numbers may dictate with Divine Diablo, but a nice 6 tackles on the day, a half a sack, a tackle for loss, not a bad way for him to start. What about you, Aaron? What did you see that you liked with what Jeff Ulbrich did in his strategy today, and maybe what, like Jarvis said, we'll say, I don't know if I'll say didn't like, we'll say maybe it was a head scratcher.
Yeah, I thought overall the defense looked good. There, as you guys mentioned, there were a couple of moments where I was a little nervous about the run defense early in the game, but they seemed to tighten up. The only real knock really was just Baker's scrambles were a little too effective, if you ask me, and that was one of those things that we hoped with all the added speed and athleticism that the Falcons added up front, that mobile quarterbacks would not be a problem for them. And it was just a couple of times where Baker was able to extend some plays, and you were like, okay, who was responsible for spying him in those situations? And other than that, like as Jarvis said, I thought Divine Diablo had a great debut for the Falcons. It was funny watching him run out there as number 0, and I'm like, why is Lorenzo Carter making all these plays? But like it was Divine Diablo, but like there's like a similar size, and their build is like the same.
Sure. Yeah.
And so like they look very similar in the way that they're, like this Agent Zero is actually making the plays that the other Agent Zero wasn't consistently making. But hey, happy retirement to Lorenzo Carter. He's out there living his life, probably chowing down on some lemon pepper wings, enjoying his life. But that's kind of the one area that was a little sketchy to me, because I noticed a lot that the Falcons were blitzing Divine Diablo and dropping Caden Ellis into coverage. And I'm just like, maybe we should flip that a little bit, because Diablo can do some of the, there was a couple of times where I think it was, I can't remember who it was, Buka or Shepard got a big 3rd down conversion with Caden Ellis over the middle late in the game. And it was just like, is that a Divine Diablo coverage play, not a Caden Ellis coverage play? I think Caden Ellis had a solid game, but there was just a couple of times where you're just like, yeah, he's not the world's greatest coverage guy, and why are we asking him to drop into coverage this much when we know what he does really well, and you had plenty of opportunities to do that really well in this game. I don't think you took advantage of that. And so that's, again, just tweaking it, just like, hey, can we get like 3 more rushes from Caden Ellis instead of 3 rushes from Divine Diablo? And that's probably the perfect balance, if you ask me.
Yeah, and I think, Jarvis, that's kind of a question I had, piggybacking on Aaron's point, maybe just those tweaks here and there as the season goes on, and Jeff Ulbrich now sees these guys in real game time action, if you will, and able to see them on multiple plays and multiple packages, and kind of deciding, okay, this is what's going to work a little bit better for Caden Ellis. This is what's going to work a little bit better for Divine Diablo, or even the fact that the Falcons have a couple games to figure it out when it comes to any concerns you might have as far as scramblers, because I wouldn't necessarily say I was nervous or concerned if I'm the Falcons defense about JJ McCarthy or Bryce Young being world beaters when it comes to being able to scramble out of the pocket and make something happen. Not saying they can't do it on some level, but Baker Mayfield is actually one of the better quarterbacks in the league to be able to do that. But it is something that you want to be able to tweak and get together before you see Jaden Daniels.
No doubt about it, because not letting the quarterback consistently break containment will kill you.
Yeah.
It will kill you every single time. I'm talking about guys that are pocket passers. If Arne Ebiketie peeks his head inside and decides to go ahead and go on in there, and you don't get there, oh my goodness. It was just so much room to run. Like Baker had like, you put your linebackers in situations where, like, oh, if you don't make an off-field tackle, he might be taking that bad boy to the house. So I feel like that's rush discipline is the word for it, right? Like, they need to have that. I'm sure Nate Ollie and Jock Smith and all those guys are going to be drilling that in their heads. Like, hey, man, JJ McCarthy is not the most athletic quarterback ever, but he will take off. He will run if you give it to him. If you're going to give it to him, yeah, he's going to take it. And that because that's exactly what Michael Penix did. He did that. If the Bucs were like, oh, you going to miss me? Oh, I'm still standing up? Okay. All right, I'll step up in the pocket and take off running. That's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to make plays. But that's not going to be my go-to. But if you present it to me in a certain way, I will definitely take advantage. And I feel like the Falcons have to do that, going forward, not just next week. They have to do that. You will lose football games if you continue to allow the quarterback to buy time, get outside the pocket, just simply because you decide to run inside and it wasn't a stunt. It wasn't planned. So yeah, like you have to have that rush discipline in order to be effective in rushing the passer.
Yeah, and Aaron, obviously not nearly the impact on the defensive side of the ball as on the offensive side of the ball as it relates to Darnell Mooney not being able to play today. But there were a few guys on the defensive side of the ball that didn't get an opportunity to play in Clark Phillips III and DeMarco Hellams. Just thinking about DeMarco Hellams and what you were able to see sometimes during especially at the beginning of camp and at the beginning of the offseason. Any thoughts just in terms of what the Falcons may have missed out on? Any plays here and there where you're like, wow, what DeMarco could have brought to the table? Maybe not so much Clark Phillips, so we'll just stick with DeMarco.
Oh, well, part of me is like, I'm kind of happy DeMarco Hellams didn't play because he probably would have headhunted Baker Mayfield on one of those two or those scrambles and would have got like a 15-yard penalty just because that's just how DeMarco plays.
Yeah, right. Hey, he was going to give him help. You're right.
DeMarco, I feel like is one of those guys that in the games where the Falcons are getting run on, those are the games where you're like, we miss DeMarco Hellams. And again, I don't think this was one of those games where I feel like you really missed DeMarco Hellams' presence in terms of that physicality when it comes to over the middle. Those couple of slants that, maybe Mike Evans could have got checked a little bit, old school style, coming across the middle and whatnot. So I feel like, I thought Xavier Watts had a good game. He had a couple of pass breakups, had a couple of almost interceptions in this game, and had a real great open field tackle on a shoestring tackle on a screen pass.
Touchdown saving tackle.
Yeah. So like, I feel like DeMarco Hellams could have brought something to this team. Maybe he would have stopped that big punt return or something like that, and it would have laid somebody out there. But, DeMarco Hellams giveth and DeMarco Hellams taketh away when it comes to how he likes to play football. And so sometimes you got to be like, let's peel back a little bit, DeMarco.
Yeah, I think that I don't think that because what DeMarco Hellams does so well is he's a headhunter. Like, I know those safeties aren't in style anymore, and they've pretty much been phased out of the league by the way they call those hits nowadays, because for the most part, Marco is pretty spot on when it comes to the area he's supposed to be in. He doesn't really just go straight for your head. Like, it might end up looking like that in real time, but when you actually go back and look at the replay, in the preseason, hey, pretty solid doggone hits. Exactly where you want your safety to be when it comes from that chest into your knee, right? Like right up in there in that area. That's where you want to be. So I think that for him not being out there, I don't think they necessarily missed him. I don't think they missed Clark Phillips either, because who knows what Clark Phillips is at this point in his career? Because, like you said, when you have those injuries, you have a guy that you wanted to move down inside and didn't necessarily work out because the guy that you drafted to play that spot came in and said, yep, this is my spot, and I'm going to put Alford as a kick returner. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the type of stuff that you actually want. Like, that's the reason why you bring guys in like Billy Bowman. So for him not being out there, you didn't miss anything. But DeMarco Hellams, I feel like he's one of those guys where I feel like you got to put him in some type of package to just be on the field because he's done so well for you in the past couple of preseasons. It's just unfortunate that he dealt with the injury last year, and now he's dealing with another injury. So yeah, that's the unfortunate part.
Yeah. And I know we've been talking about defense, but Aaron, I wanted to also kind of circle back to this because now we're talking about players who were clearly missed today. And I know that the Falcons will miss him for the entire season, but man, there were just so many moments, especially when you look at how the run game played out, because we never want to have a conversation with this Atlanta Falcons football team where Michael Penix Jr. is throwing 36 times. Like that's not the conversation that you ultimately want to have, but it was what it was. But that's when it makes you really, really know how much you miss a Caleb McGarry. And 42 times, correction, 42 times, you darn sure don't want him having MPX to have to throw that often.
No.
And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where that was a question. Would they be able to run the football without Caleb McGarry in this game? And they've always kind of struggled against the Bucs, in large part due to, a certain, Pacific Islander that lives in the middle of that defense. That is a natural phenomenon in terms of what he does in the middle of the defense. And so it kind of forces you to run outside, and that becomes a lot easier when you have someone like Caleb McGarry able to create the push that he does, and you just didn't get that from a consistent standpoint today. And that's going to be something, again, hopefully they'll have a little bit more success moving forward than they did this particular Sunday. But we sat here for 2 weeks basically saying everybody's concerned about the pass protection. That, again, Elijah Wilkinson did give up a sack in this game, probably gave up a couple more pressures, but it wasn't necessarily to the point where it was like, oh no, they can't hold up at all, this is terrible, or anything like that. But it was like, can they run block? And that was the big question. And the answer today was no, they couldn't do it. And I think a lot of that had to do with Caleb McGarry's absence.
Yeah, I think that, obvious. I echo what Aaron said when he talked about the run game. That wasn't there. It's just, for me, I would prefer, even though we know your run blocking is not on that level, pass blocking, probably, pick one, for the most part. But when you talk about the pre-snap penalties, false starts and all that stuff, and you still figuring out a way to put points on the board in spite of what you're doing, those are the things that I get upset about. Those are the things that I feel like, man, you can stay on sides. You're at home. Why are you jumping off sides? Like, bro, there's no excuse for that. There's no excuse for that. Those are some of the things that you should be able to correct. If you don't, there's a reason why they got a couple guys in here that probably can stay on sides for you. And there are some guys that probably might be a little bit better, in that run game. Not saying that, Elijah Wilkinson should be benched at this moment, but like, you can't have those type of penalties in this moment in a divisional game that you knew coming in that this was going to be a close game. I was having conversations. Everyone I talked to, I was like, yep, it's going to be a close one. It's going to be a toss-up. It's going to be a coin toss. We knew that. Everyone knew that, because these teams are so close to, in proximity to each other when it comes to about how good, when you talk about how good they are. So, like, when you have things like that, that's when you really miss Caleb McGarry. The run game, for sure, we kind of knew that. We knew that coming in, that there was going to be a drop-off. But when you have these pre-snap penalties and your name getting called by those zebras out on the field, that's unacceptable. Sorry.
Yeah, because no, it's the truth, because it's one thing to have a day when your run game isn't on par and you kind of had an expectation for that. But when you have 8 penalties for 55 yards and we keep hearing about pre-snap penalties, and it also neutralizes what the Bucs are doing, because they had 5 penalties for 60 yards, so they technically had more. But it's not just about the penalties and the number of penalties, quantity, but it's about quality as well. And when I mean quality, saying that they just can't happen at certain times. Like, there are certain penalties you're like, all right, fine, whatever, you make mistakes, it's not a perfect game. But those pre-snap penalties at the most inopportune times that were stalling and really killing drives, like that. And I think Jarvis, you said it best. At home.
Yeah, but not on the road. It's not a road game.
Exactly. Yeah, it happens. But hey, right. Despite a loss, we are still going to wrap on a positive note. So we are still going to give out some game balls, because there were still some good things that we saw in today's game. This episode of our Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by Upside. Hey, Falcons fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Well, stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back after every fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code touchdown and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. Now, you can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, I thought it was too good to be true. You probably did as well, but it really is totally legit. Like, I've used it. It's legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift for Amazon and other brands. So don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app using my limited time promo code touchdown for a limited time 25-cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code touchdown. Offers vary by user and location, but go to upside.com for terms and conditions and for more information. So let's start on the offensive side of the ball, Aaron. Give me game balls because, hey, there are still some good things that we saw from this Falcon squad today.
Yeah, I thought Penix had a solid day, rocking the do-rag in honor of, the Falcons would-be MVP.
I love it.
So, it got down to the end of the game, and, it wasn't his arm that won the Falcons the game. It was his legs that sort of won the Falcons, or put them in a position to win. Unfortunately, the Falcons did not win the game. So shock. What a surprise. Falcons blew a lead. Oh, my God. I think Penix is one of the standouts in this game. We talked about Divine Diablo as another guy that stood out. Trying to think who else. Yeah, I mean, it just mostly Penix. It was a solid debut. I didn't get the 30 burger that I was pushing for, but I won't put that on the quarterback. I feel like he did all the things that he needed to do in order for this offense to be put in a position to succeed. And so overall, I think it was a solid debut for Michael Penix. This is something that you can build off of. I like the fact that the Falcons got off to a better start than they got off to last year in Penix's 3 starts, where the passing game didn't really get into a rhythm until midway through the second quarter. Now, technically, you could argue that it didn't do that again until today because the touchdown that they had on opening drive was mostly Bijan Robinson as opposed to Michael Penix. But we'll take what we can get. I got a opening drive touchdown. I think they said on the broadcast it was the first time the Falcons in a week 1 game had an opening drive touchdown since 2012. And I was like, good grief. Crazy. That's a long time. So, hey, Michael Penix, welcome to the record books. We will take what we can get on that. So, solid debut for Michael Penix, and I think he'll continue to build off of this type of performance as things go forward.
But you know what, Free? That makes perfect sense because I can't think of the last time I didn't hear the words on an opening drive, and the kick is good. I mean, at best. So not surprising that we had to go all the way back over a decade to find pay dirt when it comes to an opening drive. But for you, Jarvis, who gets your game ball on offense?
On the offensive side of the football, I'm surprised Aaron didn't mention this. It had to be that first drive. I'm giving the first drive a game ball because that blue magic that I saw with Bijan Robinson getting him the ball out of the backfield. Zach Robinson listens to our show, y'all. I mean, I think this is something we need to celebrate because a certain person, with a tie on, said, "Hey, not only should you turn around and hand it off to him, but because with giving your right tackle situation, you're gonna have to give him the ball out of the backfield, and every time." He got Michael Penix threw the ball to him out of that backfield. He was the first person did not make that tackle. It did not because he's 1-on-1 in the open field, and 7 is going to win. So yeah, I got to give a game ball to that blue magic that we saw on that first drive because that was just a beautiful thing to watch. I was like, man, look at Zach up here taking notes while he listens to our podcast on the Falcons Squad Show, and he be listening to Lock on Falcons too because I saw some of that. I saw some of that too, Free. So you know what I'm saying? I keep doing your thing, bro.
Well, I tell you, I'm going to probably have to go look this up and hope that my black card, street cred card doesn't get ripped because I have no clue what Jarvis is talking about when he's talking about blue magic, but I'm going to move right on.
It's an American Gangster reference, G.
Oh,
movie that you probably haven't seen.
A movie? Oh, yeah, no. Okay, so moving right along. I know the movie exists. But
yes, there we go.
That's good enough. Don't yank my car, good people. But yeah, Michael Penix Jr. is a good day. We hope he doesn't have to have this type of day again where we're talking about him throwing the ball 42 times, but 27 of 42, still nice, just a hair under 300 yards, passing, a touchdown, and also, of course, scampering for 21 yards on 6 carries. Hey, we'll take that all day, every day. And then, like you said, Jarvis, a very nice way to start the game with that opening drive. Not just a nice mix, if you will, but being able to possess the ball for as long as they did. I thought the Falcons did a nice job there as well. So
Saints
yeah,
drive was nice. It was nice
yeah,
to watch. Yes.
yeah, that drive, yeah,
Drive.
exactly.
Yeah.
Very nice to watch. What about defense, Jarvis? And Free, did you give your defense?
Yeah, Diablo was
Divine
the
Diablo?
one guy
Yes,
that stood out.
exactly. And what about you, Jarvis?
I want to give Xavier Watts. Can I give Xavier Watts one? Because he was one of those rookies where I thought, hey, man, I don't know. The boy looked a little timid in preseason, but he was out there breaking on balls. Now, granted, you want him to finish those plays, and stop a touchdown or stop a drive or give the offense the extra possession. But the fact that he was out there being aggressive, trying to jump routes and stuff and breaking up the ball. I mean, all you gotta do is just hold on to it, man. Just hold on to that rock, man.
Yeah.
Needed that
Or
turnover.
just time it a hair, just a hair more, and just because you're stretching out for it.
Yeah,
just a little bit better.
But that was nice to watch, especially when he has number 31 on, and we know who wore number 31 last year. And we were looking for him, and we were still looking for him throughout the entire season. We were looking for him, but we saw 31 today. Yeah, but Xavier Watts definitely, first game as a starter in there with Mr. Bates, like out there making plays. I love to see these young pups. They just, But as far as those other young pups that played up front, sirs, I need to put APB out on 27. I'm just saying. I hate to go negative, but yeah, I like the back end of rookies. The back end rookies.
But I will tell you. Okay, so we're gonna do this real quick. Right, we're gonna do this real quick, and then I promise we really are gonna end on a high note. But because you went there, Jarvis, I'm gonna let you stay in that space, and I'm gonna say offense or defense, no balls. Who gets no balls?
Ooh, man, I hate to do this.
I'm not one to wait for us to end on a positive note. I promise.
I'm not one to toot my horn, but 27.
Toot.
That man wasn't nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found. Like 27. Come on. Like all this hype. People were clamoring for you to be out there. And just nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found. Yeah. I know people saying, oh, what about 11? Yeah, he disappeared a little bit too. He was out there, but he wasn't out there. But I'm starting with 27 because I think that he's a guy that got a lot of reps in the preseason. I was just gonna say, you got to give 11 a break. Ain't no excuse, ramping up, situation. No, but you played you played as many reps you possibly could in the preseason, and I just didn't see what I wanted to see and what I needed to see as well. Because guess what Tampa did? They made sure that they were chipping. They weren't going to put their tackles in situations where, he blocking one-on-one. They were pretty consistent with it too. They involved their tight ends heavily in the pass protection game, and that goes to show you putting your players in position to succeed. That's what happened today, and I think that 27 was not. He just wasn't there, so no balls for him.
No balls for James Pierce Jr. What about you, Aaron?
You said offense, defense. I'll go with special teams. Obviously, we talked about Koo, the
for real,
the big punt return. It was just like Jamal Agnew gets hurt. It's like, all right, what was the whole point?
Shocking. Jamal Agnew gets hurt.
We got a half of Jamal Agnew, and that's it. That's the Jamal Agnew experience. Like, what's going on with that? This man has been nowhere to be seen since the Falcons signed him. So we will see what happens again. Maybe they get a boost when Marco Holmes comes back, but special teams was not up to par, especially given all the money they spent on special teams this offseason. The fact that it was looking so good in the preseason and training camp, and
Mike Ford only made the team because he played special teams, and he's been in the league for like 13 years.
It was I don't know if Marquise has that dog in him to get after these guys like Keith Armstrong would have, but we need Keith Armstrong this week in
Fourier.
Yeah.
Come on, Fourier.
Yeah.
Fourier.
You do. You need.
People
Yeah,
look at
you
me
might
crazy
need
as
some.
I'll get out, right?
Yeah, you might need some Keith Armstrong energy up in that special teams room because they definitely were a dud for the most part today. But also, we of course want to end on an optimistic, positive note that everything will be well with Drake London. Tough kind of not seeing him in the final 2 minutes of the game because of that shoulder injury that he sustained late. And hey, listen, like I said, all we can do, Falcons fans, go on and get in your prayer closet because it's enough to have seen what this game looked like without Darnell Mooney, and especially with that play that we talked about earlier that Casey Washington didn't execute on. No Drake London. Yes, the Falcons still were able to drive down the field, but you just got to hope that we're not having any type of conversation about any type of long-term shoulder situation with Drake London. Just so much that we saw towards the end of last season with what he was able to do, even things that you saw in the offseason this year. And you hope that Zach Robinson would have the opportunity to play with all the toys. So again, just want to send out good vibes to Drake. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Falcons Squad Show your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Falcons next because Aaron Freeman is about to drop some more jewels on you that you don't want to miss. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. And of course, you can check out Jarvis because he joins him to drop jewels from time to time as well. And of course, we'll have an opportunity in the next less than 24 hours to break down the tape. So make sure you come back Monday to check out the Squad Show where we will dive deeper into this unfortunate end to week one. Falcons fall to the Bucs 23-20. We will see you next time.